What's up, everybody? Welcome to this week's episode of the Dents Fixes podcast. I'm your host, Brad, joined by Micah.
Hey.
And Carrie.
What's up?
I feel like the entire games industry has really taken off the last couple weeks when it comes to news. There's not many stories. The stories that there are pretty big. And let's start with the one that kind of is a follow-up to the EA story that we talked about last week, where they're essentially doubling the prices of Apex Legends Battle Passes. And right on the heels of that, literally the day after we recorded last week's episode, Microsoft came out and announced that they are restructuring Game Pass in some interesting ways. And again, if you didn't know this by now, whenever the corporations are talking to anybody, be it their consumers or even the FTC, they are always lying to you. So here is the new way that Game Pass goes. So there's now 3 Game Pass tiers, as there was. Well, actually, technically, there's 4 Game Pass tiers. So they've added a Game Pass tier. So now you have Game Pass Core, right, which is the very bottom tier. It's still $10 a month, but the annual price has increased from $60 to $75 a year. Not that big a deal, I think, because PlayStation, if you recall, did also increase their PlayStation Plus last year or a couple months ago to the same. I think there's actually $80 a year, if I'm not mistaken.
It is, because I just renewed it.
Yep. But Game Pass Core gets you, Xbox deals and discounts. It gets you online multiplayer and 25 plus high quality games on console from their Game Pass catalog. You'll notice that I did not mention day one Xbox exclusive releases. If we go up to the next tier, and this is kind of the one that they, I think, created in this new mix, Game Pass Standard, which is $14.99 a month. And that's, it's $14.99 a month. I was right about that. And that gets you more games, hundreds of games to choose from in the Xbox catalog, online multiplayer, and members and deals and discounts. Again, you'll notice I did not mention day one access to Xbox exclusives, because if you want that, you're going to need to get Game Pass, the newly reconfigured Game Pass Ultimate, which has not gained any new features, but has still gone up to $19.99 from its previous price of $16.99. So it's gone up by $3, even though Microsoft told the FTC that no, like if we make this merger, we won't need to increase Game Pass prices. They literally waited, 8 months for that to happen?
I mean, Jesus, Like, I mean, it was inevitable, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's why no one's, surprised. Like, you could be pissed, but I don't think anyone is surprised. I dropped, and essentially, Game Pass Core is just Xbox Gold.
Yes.
Right? The ability to play online with your friends and get a couple of games, I guess. Do they rotate? Do those games rotate? Those 25
yes,
games?
they do.
Okay. And then Game Pass Standard is not. I mean, it's the same thing.
Well, except so my assumption is, and I don't know if this is correct. My assumption is that Game Pass Standard will have like a static catalog with very few rotations, and I would expect Game Pass Core's selection of games to change much more frequently, if that makes sense.
I would imagine that they would change according to the quote hundreds of games that are available in the $14.99 tier.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I would assume they're just going to pull from that and rotate, those 250 games in and out every month.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Whereas this one, you get it. Look, this is a bit of a ripoff.
Well, I think
because
people are not. I think people, like, the general reaction from the community is not necessarily upset that they raised the price of Ultimate, even though people are, of course, upset about that.
Yeah, that's not what.
Isn't it more about taking away the day one?
It's about gaining the day one,
day one
pass behind Ultimate. Now,
right? Because you could get that with the previous Xbox console Game Pass, console only.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Does Game Pass Ultimate? Yeah, Game Pass Ultimate includes PC and console. But you could get it.
So here's what's funny. What's not listed on this article is they still have PC Game Pass. And PC Game Pass has gone up to $11.99 from $9.99. But it also includes the day one releases.
Yo, come on, man. What the fuck?
You know what's really funny about this story is that it had me look at my Microsoft account, because I was also going to get charged for my year of access to like the core Microsoft programs I need to live. And I did not realize that I had been paying for PC Game Pass. So I canceled it because I haven't been using it. So congratulations, you raised prices. And I looked at my Microsoft account, realized I was getting something that I was about to be charged more for, and canceled it straight away.
Well, this ties in beautifully with the other story that I kind of have handcuffed to this. So Microsoft put out a new ad last week to announce the fact that Xbox Game Pass is now coming to Amazon Fire Stick. So now if you have an Amazon Fire Stick, you can download the Xbox Game Pass app through that. And for some reason, the commercial apes the original, like the opening scene from the original Scream, which is a movie that turns 30 in 2 years, fellow olds. So feel that one in your bones when you get a chance. But the whole point of the ad, and this is explicitly said in the ad, is you don't need an Xbox to play Xbox. And in fact, if PC Game Pass is $11.99 and still gives you access to the Game Pass catalog and day one exclusive releases, in fact, it is not like you don't want an Xbox to play Xbox. Like you want a PC to play Xbox.
Yeah. Yeah, this doesn't make any sense, guys. I don't, I'm a poor, so I don't know how business works. But the one thing I do know is that I should have gotten a marketing degree, because you could just throw any old dumb shit that just doesn't make sense, and just keep a job, right? Like, first of all, like, the ad is aping a horror movie. That's not something that I would want to equate with my product. Something horrific. You know what I mean? Especially a very well-known, like, hey guys, if you pick up this phone and you keep with this line of questioning, you're gonna fucking die. You got questions about your games? Guess what? Someone's gonna stab you in the neck. And second of all, yeah, man, like, they really don't care about the console market.
Mm-mm.
Which you know,
if you
I
want to sell
guess,
hardware, why are you
but
telling
like,
people not to buy your hardware?
right. Well,
Do
I
they?
don't think they really gave, like, here's the thing. I don't think they ever really gave a shit, which is why they're like, "Oh yeah, let's just make this, and this. Like, let's make 3 versions of the same box, all with different SKUs and different prices to give the illusion of player choice." But like, they don't really give a shit. So at the same time, like, why make all those boxes?
Yeah.
Like, if you don't really give a shit, why make all those boxes? Right? Why not just make the mid-tier box, and maybe you'll break even from suckers like me who will buy every console, and just kind of focus on, why don't they just go the Sega route?
I mean, who says they won't eventually?
Yeah.
I mean, they probably will now.
It
but-
kind of feels like they're headed that way, and they're not exactly being super coy about doing so.
It's
Another
just funny.
another fun note about this change that they're making is that this all goes into effect on September 12th, not coincidentally about a month before the new Call of Duty releases, which they've already confirmed will be on Game Pass Day 1. I'm sure that was an impetus for making this move. They're only going to let you stack your Game Pass Ultimate on console for 13 months maximum. So like, if you find like a cheap sale somewhere for like someone selling codes for your Game Pass Ultimate subscription. You can't just buy like 5 years worth of codes and stack them up. You can only stack 13 months worth at a time, because I guess they got tired of people taking advantage of those like dollar deals and all this other shit that was going on. I can't remember which podcast I heard it on, but I heard someone say what it really feels like now. Like, you know how Xbox used to almost feel like its own company outside of Microsoft? Like, you were aware it was a Microsoft company, but like Xbox was such a strong brand that it felt like its own thing apart from Microsoft. Now Xbox just feels like any other Microsoft brand that lives under that corporate umbrella with changes like this.
Yeah. Man, I'm talking about 30-year-old movies. Like, I remember when everybody needed to have an Xbox, right? Like, they had The Rock at his least annoying come out and pitch this thing, man. Like, it was like this thing was like, it started console wars. This thing was so popular, it started the modern console
Well,
war.
and it's also interesting because Xbox was the first platform, for anyone that cares about this shit. Xbox was really the first platform that was developed that was successfully developed in the West. Like, but prior to that, like everything that had been majorly successful in the industry, in the modern age, had been developed in Japan. Whereas Xbox was the first one that really hit it big in the West. I mean, obviously like Atari and stuff like that in the prior age, but like obviously by the time Xbox had come out, Atari had pretty much fizzled out, and that didn't really work out too well. But this was like, I don't think it's a coincidence that Microsoft is a U.S. company, and that fueled a lot of impetus behind it for gamers that were looking to make a change or something of that nature. So it's just kind of funny to watch how that platform has evolved, to kind of see its peaks in the PS3 360 generation, and to watch it slowly having cratered for basically the last decade, to where we are now, where they're telling you straight up, hey, again, we've alluded to the fact that they're suggesting that they don't really care if you buy an Xbox or not, and now they're making ads that are just literally saying it.
Just straight up saying, like, you don't need our console. You don't need that shit. Just get Game Pass. Give us more money over several years every month. Thanks. Like, that's it. That's all they're trying to do.
Wow.
Yep.
All right, guys.
So,
all right. Well, I got that big ass paperweight over there.
And it's funny because really all they're doing really, and I guess they don't care because they're going to get the money either way. They're really just driving more and more people to PC. Like with every passing, I could not have timed shifting to PC any better than I possibly did, because with every passing month, it console just becomes less and less attractive, and
they're driving people. Yeah. They're driving people to PC, but they're not necessarily driving people to PC Game Pass.
Right.
They're driving people to Steam, more than they're driving people to PC Game Pass. So I don't know how sustainable this is going to be for the Microsoft video game division, but I think ultimately within the next couple years we will know if Xbox as a brand is really still around. So
I think you're seeing this because their subscriber growth for Game Pass has plateaued.
Stalled.
I don't think that it's been growing at all over the last 18 months. They had their big they developed this and came out with this idea at the right time during the pandemic. Like they rode that pandemic wave to making this service really successful. But through combination of the pandemic ending and people kind of getting back to normal consumer habits, but also Microsoft not being able to capitalize on the advantage that they built for themselves with their first party studios, has kind of led us to where they are today. Game Pass Ultimate at $20 would still be an amazing deal if you were getting quality first party Microsoft releases coming out like every 2 months. say what you will about Nintendo, but there's usually something at least mildly compelling coming from Nintendo. It may not be like a big like megaton AAA game coming from them every 2 months, but usually every couple months you're getting something from them.
You're getting something first party. You know, it might not be Mario Odyssey 2, but like you'll get Princess Peach Showtime, right? You're gonna get the Thousand Year Door remake. You're gonna get the Mario RPG remake. You know, they put things out of such a consistent quality that even if it's not the fucking blockbuster of the year for them, they'll still end up selling, you know, 4 million copies of something. Like it's absurd how many copies of even their sort of like B tier stuff tends to move. But yeah, no, you're right. Like even if they're not sort of blowing the roof off the place, like Nintendo has been just like so consistent.
Here's a perfect example of that. Micah, how many copies of Luigi's Mansion 3 do you think Nintendo has sold to date? Just off the top of your head, ballpark guess. Knowing what the Luigi's Mansion series is, you know, as where it is in the Nintendo like hierarchy of games.
I don't know, 1 million.
This is the one with Gooigi, mind you.
With Gooigi.
1 million. I have no idea. I have no idea.
Micah, they have sold over, I want to say the number is over 15 million copies of Luigi's Mansion 3.
It is. By March 2023, Luigi's Mansion 3 had sold 12.82 million copies worldwide, which makes it within, you know, one of the best-selling titles on Switch. So it's within the top 20.
The third iteration of the janitor game?
Yes.
Yo, come on.
But that's what I'm saying. Like Nintendo just they put out fucking banger games of assorting tiers of importance.
Okay, as of March 31st, 2024, 14.25 million on Luigi's Mansion 3.
There you go. Damn near 15 million.
Here's another one, you know. Mario Party Superstars. How many units do you two think that sold?
Mario Party Superstars. All right. Well, now that I know that the metric is double digit, you know, million, Mario Party.
Mario Party Superstars, which is like it's basically, I think that's like the collection
of like the best mini games.
It's a bunch of like remade stuff from earlier Mario parties. It didn't really introduce anything new.
All right, well, I gotta imagine it's more than Luigi's Mansion, right? Just for the simple fact that like Mario Party is a party game. You get it just to kind of like throw on and have a good time while you eat pizza or whatever. I'm gonna say 17.
Oh, that's exactly what I was going to guess. 17 million.
Well, it's actually less than that. It's 12.89 million, but that's still almost 15 million copies of a game that's literally just repurposed archival content of older Mario.
I mean, speaking of repurposed content, I mean, you know, Micah, do you know what the highest selling game on Nintendo Switch is to date?
The game?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's got to be like Wii Sports or something, right?
No, for the Switch.
For the Switch.
Oh, I'm sorry. Again, look at my eyes. I'm really tired. No, but given your repurposed clue, it's some sort of collection or amalgamation of
you could say that.
I would. The problem is I don't have a good Nintendo like backlog or catalog in my brain.
It's it's Mario Kart 8 Deluxe.
Really?
And it sold like 50 million copies on this.
Oh, I can do you better than that. As of March 31st, 2024, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe has sold 61.97 million copies.
That's literally like half the Switches that exist.
That's basically, like, you know, as of the same time, 141.32 million Switch consoles have been sold. So again, that's basically like 45% of every Switch owner in the world owns Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Basically, it's almost 50%.
Now, wasn't there a Mario Kart 8 and a Mario Kart 8 Deluxe?
Mario Kart 8 was the Wii U version. They did not do a new version of Mario Kart 8. They ported it from the Switch. And then here's the thing.
So
Since then, they did
so-
what they called like the booster pass,
Yeah.
which
literally has another game's worth of tracks.
basically
48 additional tracks.
has 48 additional tracks, a bunch of extra characters, new music, new carts, all new customizations for those carts.
Much like Smash Brothers, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is so good that you literally say to yourself, "Well, what the fuck are they going to do with Mario Kart 9? How do you make a Mario Kart 9 when this is literally like the epitome, like literally the ultimate Mario Kart game?"
And then keeping in mind, to go back to the original Game Pass discussion, it only costs $50 for a full year of Switch expansion pass online, and that comes with the booster pass, all the expansion content for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. It also comes with all the expansion content for the second best-selling Switch game of all time, which is Animal Crossing New Horizons, which sold more than 45 million copies. So what's really, I remember people bitching about the price of Switch Online's expansion pass, but they give you the DLC for their two most popular first-party games for free, including with that. Then that's before all the, NES, Super Nintendo, Game Boy Advance, Genesis, N64 games that you get through the Switch Online service.
This is wild, man. Because Animal Crossing, I'm looking at the list. Animal Crossing only came out 4 years ago.
Yeah,
correct.
But again, it came out at the right time.
It came out right at the start of the pandemic. That's what really served New Horizons. Side note, I'm just gonna go ahead and say this: New Horizons wasn't very good long term. New Horizons benefited a lot from the fact that it came out right at the start of lockdown for most of us. And it was a way to basically still sort of socialize online with your friends in sort of a chill online environment. But I thought, like, in retrospect, New Horizons kind of sucked compared to earlier Animal Crossing games. And I don't think anybody wants to say that, but New Horizons, like, kind of fell off. So,
but like I said, we kind of went on this Nintendo tangent just to kind of illustrate the point that you can you can charge people $20 a month for something if what you're selling is worth buying. And I don't think that Xbox has done anything in the past 10 years to make that claim plausibly.
No.
So it's gonna be real interesting. Like I said, I think the main effect is to what Carrie alluded to earlier. They're forcing a lot of people to relook at their Game Pass subscription and say, do I really need this? And I have a feeling a lot of people, the answer to that, especially since you got rid of day one Game Pass games for the lower tier, the answer is probably no for a lot of folks, I would imagine.
Yeah, man, they had that really good presentation at the Keighley Games Fest, and they injected a little bit of life into that community, and like, hey, we've got a Pulse, right? We've got Perfect Dark, and a bunch of other games that, like, they did a good job. But now this is just like, I don't know, man.
I mean, but you have a lot of lost Call of Duty sales that you're going to need to make up for somehow.
Yep.
And this is their way to do it. So, there you go. What a great place to take a break. We'll be back in a little bit with more news. Team, I have found the impossible. I have found the white whale, a mystical figure that I never thought I would see in my entire life. We have seen a actually quality post to come from the social media network LinkedIn. which is usually a fucking haven for, really cornball pro corpo shit and the rise and grind, system universe that exists over there. But we actually got a good post, and this came from, I don't know if criticism is the right word, but the creator of The Long Dark, Raphael van Lierop, basically took aim at a game that's published by Hooded Horse that came out recently on PC called Manor Lords. Manor Lords is a medieval city building game that released into early access a couple months ago. And the thing that makes one of the things that makes Manor Lords notable, besides the fact that it's actually a pretty good game from what I've heard, is that it was developed almost entirely by one person. At least like the beginning of development, through up until like the polishing stages were done, by one guy who made this really good looking, and interesting, but not quite fully fleshed out city building game. And it's not fully fleshed out because it's in early access. And the Raphael van Lierop went online, and basically said, calling attention, he's like, "Oh, Manor Lords is a pretty interesting case study in the pitfalls of early access development." And his point for this was that the game is lacking in content, and because the development team is so small, essentially it's this one guy, that updates are coming slowly. And he looked to see the number of concurrent players. Obviously, when Manor Lords released, it had pretty good concurrent player counts, and then those have fallen off. And he says, given the huge number of wish lists and hype around the game, this is something that the developer and publisher should have been better prepared for, advising early access developers to have a plan to release 2 to 3 major updates with new contents and features within 3 months of releasing the game. Now, guy was dragged a little bit online for his take, but the CEO of Hooded Horse, the publisher, Tim Bender, went on LinkedIn and basically gave a retort to this criticism. And I'll read it verbatim. I don't know if I'm going to read the whole thing, but this is kind of the crux of it. Quote, "This is exactly the kind of distorted, endless growth / burden of expectations / line must go up perspective that causes so much trouble in the game industry. Manor Lords just sold 250,000 copies in the last month after selling over 2 million copies in its first 3 weeks, and it has a very positive review rating of 88% with a median playtime of 8 hours 48 minutes per player. Very long for any game, especially a recently released one. Players are happy, the developer is happy, and we as a publisher are thrilled beyond belief. And yet here we are. Manor Lords is apparently, quote, a case study in the pitfalls of early access, end quote, because the game has been out for 2.5 months, and there have been 3 fairly small patches. One of the patch notes being called small here runs over 3,000 words and over 10 single-space pages, leading to CCU's, concurrent user counts, have plummeted since launch. And apparently the dark reality that some people, after enjoying their purchase of a premium single-player title, might decide to go on and play another game, parentheses, the horror. Before the release, I had a chat with Manor Lords' dev. I told him that after release, he was going to hear from all sorts of commenters talking about the missed opportunities because he failed to grow as fast as they wanted, and judging the game a failure by some kind of expectation they formed. I told him to ignore all that, to focus on his core vision for the game, and to keep in mind that the early access road is long and that he should not feel any sense of pressure from the expectations of others for both his own health and stress levels over the coming years, and for preserving the state of calm and peaceful mind that supports his creative vision. This industry is to find a more sustainable path forward. We need to move away from the takes like the below. Success should not create an ever-raising bar of new growth expectations. Not every game should be aimed at becoming some live service boom or bust, and a release should not be in an ever-accelerating treadmill on which devs are forced to run until their mental or physical health breaks down."
Well,
Look,
go.
guys, here's a publisher that fucking gets it.
Yeah, what the hell? Yes. Is there a horn on this guy's head? Is he a unicorn? The fuck?
And this makes me happy personally, because Hooded Horse is a publisher that I've been paying a lot more attention to. They published Against the Storm, which I raved about earlier this year. They have a couple other games that are on my wish list, and I would be very happy to support Hooded Horse with my dollars now, knowing that they actually seem to give a shit about the people that are developing games for them. What a novel concept in this day and age.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Like it's so wild that you know. I don't know if Van Leeuwenhoek is like apparently he has clarified that he is deeply anti-crunch, um, but I don't know if he's been like indoctrinated with the like corporate I don't know malfeasance that is modern day corporate culture that like you have to if you're not making profit you failed like if you're not constantly growing like a tumor or a cancer, then you failed. Um, yeah, this is actually really refreshing. From Bender.
And the point is made like in this response. Manor Lords is a single player game. I don't know of any single player games that don't have like that don't have some kind of online component that you are that should compel you to come back all the time. Like a single player game is something you should play, maybe replay a couple times, especially something like this, which is a city builder. Play several times to kind of see what else is out there, and then move on until like another expansion comes out, a big expansion comes out for it, or until you feel nostalgic and you want to play the game again. Like there you should not be playing Manor Lords for 150 hours. I mean, and you can if you want to. That's certainly your prerogative, but that's not what they made the game to be. They made it to be a digestible experience. That's it, and that's okay. Like I found it really refreshing when Blizzard in the wake of Diablo 4 when they were talking about which is a live service game, when they were talking about their post-launch plans for the game, said that they were going to stick with the seasonal model that they had started in Diablo 3 where they put out a new season with new mechanics every 3 months or so. And they basically said, they're like, hey, like, we want you to come in there and, engorge on the seasonal content and then go somewhere else for a while. You know what I mean? Like we don't need you fucking making this game your second job. Like if you want to come in, play the new season for a couple weeks, get all your loot, grind your characters up, that sort of thing, and then go play other stuff for 2 months. That's great because that's what we're gonna go do. We don't play the same game over and over and over again either, and we don't necessarily think you should too. Like there's a whole lot of other really cool games that are out there that you can play, and I feel like some companies just again in the never-ending rush to make the line go up constantly and to just enrapture as many people for as long as you can and milk them for all they're worth financially. Lose sight of that. Make good experience.
It's funny, man, because it's like they do it with they want this with one product, right? Like they want the I was about to say the magic bullet. They want the one thing that will give them infinite growth. Like all corporations want growth, right? But like I'm not foolish enough to think that that there aren't people who want art to be a commodity. But there's a delicate
Of course
like
people want art to be a commodity. Why the fuck do you think we're in this AI generated hellscape online right now?
Right. But you can it's okay to let like the art weigh a little more than the commodity sometimes, right? Like you don't have to concord us. You know what I mean? Like
have you been paying attention to the preview coverage for that game?
I just watched Skill Up's preview of the beta, and
Not great.
No, not at all.
Not great.
Not at all. I find it hilarious, to be quite honest with you. But yeah, man, there's a balance that you can do, and there are expectations that you could set for yourself that like this game was never going to be this game was never going to be, the next big thing in gaming. It just wasn't. But you have to set realistic goals and expectations, man. And like, early access does so much I mean, like one of the best RPGs of all time, according to a wide variety of sources, was in early access for what, years?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And turns out that game was really good.
Yeah, here's an idea. More AAA studios should consider using early access, because all this fucking backlash that live service games get when they release, when they're broke as a joke and they don't have fucking content in them, a lot of that gets smoothed over if you slap an early access tag on it and be like, hey, this is still... You think Marvel Avengers has nearly the amount of hate that Marvel Avengers has if it's an early access
Anthem
game?
has the flop that it was for them if they had put that game in early access for 6 months and made adjustments accordingly? No, or early access goes a long way. But then like you also have, you know, what, Baldur's Gate 3, Hades 2, the original Hades, you know, games that have gone on to become Game of the Year, spend extensive amount of times in early access.
And look, it's the risk you run. Like, obviously not everyone is going to be game to get into the early access treadmill. Like, some people don't jive with that. A lot of people are like, hey, I'll fuck with this when it releases. Like, I'll like if it's good, I'll see then. But I think you smooth out that curve instead of having this. Really, it feels binary, especially in the AAA space right now, where it's either a hit or it's a flop. Like I feel like there's no like marginally successful games, because the goal is so high for a lot of these games that
anything less than an 8 out of 10 is deemed a failure.
Or it's not even about critical reviews. It's about commercial return. You know what I mean? Like, it's like weirdly games are like so live service games. Like, there's two paths, right? Like, live service games have to constantly be raking in millions and millions of dollars a year to be successful. Otherwise, they're garbage. And then your one and done games are almost like turning into Hollywood style, kind of looking at it through the lens where, like, hey, if you don't recoup 5 times the budget, then, you know, we shouldn't have spent the money.
Like,
right?
What the fuck?
So it's just, like I said, it's interesting, but I'm glad to see, especially in the indie space, that there are publishers that don't subscribe to that theory. And look, Hooded Horse's strategy is one as well. Like, they have a shitload of games out there that are small, and that way they don't they don't need to worry about them all being huge. And if they get to make a hit, something like It Against the Storm, which has done really well so far, then that's great, and it can help run cover for, you know, some of the games that might not have penetrated the market nearly as much. I was kind of scratching for stories this week, so I put this one on the docket just to talk about, like, why is Nintendo so weird when it comes to, like, standard business practices? And I thought about this because something that Nintendo's been doing lately with especially a lot of these games that are coming out soon, is they're like, hey, we're putting out like Super Princess Peach, or we're putting out this new Zelda game that's coming out later this year. And a question that a lot of especially journalists have is like, hey, what studio is developing? And Nintendo's like, nah, we're not going to tell you. Like you can wait and see when the credits roll. And they did the same shit last year where they announced, hey, Charles Martinet is not the voice of Mario. Who's going to be the new Mario voice actor in Super Mario Wonder? And they're like, oh, we're not going to tell you. Like you can find out later. And then a story came out last week where translators that are being contracted by Nintendo in other countries to translate their games from, you know, whatever language to a localized language are not being credited in the credits of these games when they release. And a lot of people that, a lot of the people that work for these companies say, hey, like, I kind of accepted that miscrediting is a part of the business, but that doesn't mean it's fair or right. Professionally, it's hard to tell how much has impacted me. It's entirely possible that more translation agencies would have approached me if my name was out there in all these big blockbuster Nintendo games, but who knows? And that's a fair point.
It's a totally fair point. Yeah. I guess I do want to note that, like, this particular issue, the translation issue, is not a Nintendo exclusive issue.
Sure.
This happens across the games industry where, you know, major developers and publishers will go to different translation agencies, and then in the credits, they will only list the agency rather than listing every individual who actually worked on the translation script and localization for these different languages. No, I completely agree. You know, it is one of these things that's like, it is strange on a level that it seems like they don't want to list all the individuals whose hard work actually went into this. And then on the flip side, you wonder, and this article even points it out, is like, is this an agency problem? Like, are these agencies not putting individuals' names in there because they just want the agency to get credit so that more developers and publishers will then use that agency rather than go after certain individuals? So there's blame on a lot of sides here for sure. But yeah, it doesn't really make sense to me, and this is hardly the first time this has come up. I seem to recall, like, right after Tears of the Kingdom released, we had a similar discussion about translators not getting proper credit in video games. But yeah, it is strange to me. And this, it points out in this article, there's a screen cap from the credit sequence of Animal Crossing New Horizons, where Nintendo's individual, like the list of individual names of Nintendo's internal translation department, they're all listed by name. And then LocalSoft, which is the agency that they contracted to do additional translation work, the people who worked at LocalSoft are not translated. It's just LocalSoft beneath the names of everyone at Nintendo. So yeah, it is kind of odd. I guess my question is, like, I wonder what the contracts are. Like, I would like to see the language in the contracts between Nintendo and these agencies, as well as the employment contracts between the translators and the agencies themselves. Because in a lot of cases, I'm sure these folks are, they're not salaried or anything like that. It's almost a freelance position. So I have to wonder if they, like, what if theoretically, like, what would happen if someone worked on a game under, let's say, 2 or 3 different translation agencies? Like, how does that work in the credit sequence?
Right. Or if they leave the agency halfway through, because of course the games industry, if you're not there when the game's finished, your name usually gets scrubbed from the credits, which is its own separate discussion, which is kind of bullshit as well. But such is life. It's like I said, it's just, I understand, like, Nintendo likes to be like the secretive company who keeps everything close to their vest, and that's why we don't see a lot of leaks from them and stuff like that. It's just weird in this day and age to kind of be so protective, not only of this, but again, we talked about, like, hey, we don't want to tell you which
we're not going to
studio
tell
is
you who the
developing
new
this
voice
game.
actor is.
Like, I really want to tell this. Like, it's a weird way of doing business. And it just strikes me as an odd way to kind of go about it in this, 2024 games industries. Like back in the 90s, yeah, I get it. We weren't as savvy to, development studios and stuff like that, and teams were a lot smaller. So I understand why you might not get that information out there, but people do care about that stuff nowadays. So before we get to the post office, I wanted to revisit my review of Rogue Trader from last week, because when I played it last week, about 10 hours in, and really enjoying myself, and the game hadn't really, like, opened up yet. I was still kind of not in the prologue, but like they still kept you on a pretty tight leash in that first chapter of the game. Since last week, I am now up to about 40 hours played in Rogue Trader, and I like this game a whole lot, and can't recommend it enough. Micah, you might want to cover your ears, because basically, if I had to reduce Rogue Trader down to a very reductive comparison, I would say that it is basically like Baldur's Gate 3 and Mass Effect had a beautiful 40K themed baby, and just popped it out there. Because once you get, like, out into the main world, like, there's space traversal, like you're scanning planets to get resources. There's ship battles, which are fun and simple, but they don't overstay their welcome very much. It's very Mass Effect 1-ish, where, like, you'll come across planets that have interesting things that you come across, and it's like, hey, like, you found this abandoned base, like, why don't you send a search party down there and check it out? And, like, you go down with your squad, and who knows what the fuck you'll find. Maybe you'll find a heretic cult trying to communicate with the warp. Maybe you'll find, like, a cabal of mutants down there that you need to take care of. Maybe you'll just find a struggling settlement that could use the help of the magnanimous rogue trader to help pull them out of their squalor. It's just really cool, and a lot of like very interesting things can happen. And also like it really is a great. I said this last week, but I believe it even more. It's a really cool, because normally like when you see 40K stuff in the wild, if you're not a 40K person, what is it usually? It's the fucking Space Marines like battling. It's the blue Space Marines battling the red Space Marines, and they're going head to head, and maybe there's some orcs and all that shit. But this really does kind of dive you into the different aspects of 40K that you really have to go to the novels or parts of the tabletop game to find, because like rogue traders themselves are crazy. When you get more into the game, like there's a whole plot around the Drakari, which are like the dark elves in the 40K universe, and that's pretty nifty as well. This game's fucking fun. I cannot put this fucking game down. And it's really, really good. So again, I give it my fullest recommendation. And like I said, I'm 40 hours in. I'm only in chapter 3. I think there's 5 chapters total in the game. Very easy game to get lost in just doing other shit while you're completing your main story stuff. And they leave enough of those breadcrumbs, like as you get from point A to point B to complete your main story quests. They throw all sorts of shit at you, like, hey, why don't you go check this out? What's over there? Why don't you see? Like, it's a lot of that kind of stuff. It's really good, Mike. If this ever goes on like a deep discount, you should consider it. The controller setup for it is very similar to Baldur's Gate 3. Like, if you could get down with Baldur's Gate 3 with a controller, this will work just fine. They use the same kind of format as Baldur's Gate 3 did. So really, really good. Really, really good. So we'll take one more break, and then we will be back with the Dense Pixels post office. If you are not a member of our Discord, you can join by going to densepixels.com/fans, where you can ask us questions every week that we answer in a segment that we call the Dense Pixels Post Office. Just like Mad Coco G, who asks, is the Bloodline Wolfpack more aesthetically pleasing to Micah, since there's no Yeet Man in it?
I'm still getting used to them. They seem they don't have quite the personality
No.
that that the bloodline, that the original bloodline have. But you know, it don't have those two dummies screaming at the top of their lungs. They're not good screamers either, guys. They're not good screamers. Like they just like in movies, they hire like people to specifically like scream for other people. Because you know, so like it just your voice is cracking. It's not hype, It's not hype. It's just not. But this new bloodline is like when you invite your cousin over to spend the night, and like he bring his friends, and like your cousin like lives off of Preston Street, and they come into the county where you live, and they taking all their Baltimore City sensibilities to Pikesville. And like it just don't work.
This sounds like an oddly specific experience that you're referring to.
It just doesn't work. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. I had a cousin of mine who lived off of Preston Street, and he was like, "Man, you live out in the boonies," and I'm like, "Really? It's Pikesville, yo." Like I figured the boonies was like rural. He was like, "Nah. Like, what's all these houses, backyards? Where the alleys at?" Like, oh, all right, well. Yeah, nah. This new bloodline is they weird, yo. They weird. Like I need Roman to come back and handle these fools, because they weird, yo. They evil, yo. Like
everybody knows what a dude with a black glove is capable of, as that's all Hogan famously said many years ago. So there you go. Casa asks, do you have a favorite classic arcade cabinet?
The cabinet itself,
Like as far as like the cabinet itself
aesthetics.
sort of being, I mean, I don't know about aesthetics. I would say like my two are as far as like things that I think are fun to play are one, the 6-person X-Men arcade.
Yes.
That's high key, like
Mhm.
big one. What's also interesting about that one is the way that the double screens in that have to be set up and how one of them actually requires like a mirror because it's running like backwards or something like that. And then the other one is probably like the sit down like Crazy Taxi cab because I just really like Crazy Taxi. So I like that one. That's a big one that like I will one, like if you're going to Super Magfest in January, one, I will be there. But a really easy way to find me if you don't know where I happen to be at any given time is to go into the game room and either find the Crazy Taxi arcade cabinet, or if I'm not at that, go to the Crazy Taxi Dreamcast setup because that's what I end up doing for like at least 2 hours out of any given Magfest is just like I probably have gotten a little cooked and I'm playing Crazy Taxi. So
I like any arcade cabinet you could sit down in. Like, I just want to like, I want to be immersed in it, right? Like, I told you guys, I took my son to the pizza place who decided to have their mascot be a rat, right?
mm.
And we
Charles
found
Entertainment Cheese's childhood rat casino. Yeah.
yeah, and we had a birthday party there. And they had a Halo game there, and this was his first time playing an arcade game. It was a Halo arcade game, and man, I teachers have the patience of saints, man. I don't,
Yeah,
I don't
pay
know.
them.
Yeah, man. Like I'm trying to teach him how to play something that I like to, something that like I like to do and play video games, and it's so frustrating. So yeah.
You know what? You bringing up childhood rat casinos has got me thinking about another arcade cab that I would play at I think it was the Chuck E. Cheese in like Catonsville.
Mhm.
Over on that end of the beltway anyway. The Jurassic Park arcade cab was the one where you like sit in the Jeep and you like shoot the
Mhm.
T-Rex. I remember playing that one a lot when I was a kid. I liked that game.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Like that's what I want. I want to sit my lazy ass down and play video games.
Yeah, I mean that you need to go to Japan then. That's all their shit is fucking sit down
Yeah.
cabinets. For me, it's hard to beat uh TMNT, which I guess is Turtles
Yeah.
2, technically, if you're looking at it from the console
Mhm.
perspective. There are a lot of memories there. Weirdly, also another one that I have a lot of nostalgia for. Not because it's a good game or anything, but just because of just memories of playing with friends. So a friend who I used to go down to the beach with, they had a trailer inside of like a beach community down there. So we used to go down there once or twice every summer. And for some reason, the rec center in this community had a Bucky O'Hare arcade cabinet, and we played a shitload of fucking Bucky O'Hare for some reason because it was free. It was free play. So like, what the fuck else were we doing? Like, obviously, that's the way to go. And then MK2 also for some reason like used to see that in every fucking like Pizza Hut all the time and shit like that. If your Pizza Hut was cool enough to have an arcade cabinet
I
inside of it, it was
remember
always Mortal Kombat for some reason.
I remember there was a 7-Eleven on Liberty Road that had the Mortal Kombat 2 arcade cabinet in it. And it was the only like this was when the game like the cab first like was released. I don't know how this random ass 7-Eleven
You
on
know what that
random
is?
ass Liberty Road
That's
had it.
whoever owns that 7-Eleven franchise being like, I know what's gonna make me more money. Getting one of
Hey,
them
they
video
were
game
right.
machines in here.
They were right because I went to that 7-Eleven specifically to play that game.
And I bet while you were there, you bought like a fucking
Yeah, and I
Snickers and a
bought a
Slurpee
yeah.
too.
Yeah, you buy one of them cardboard pizzas or, you know, them dusty ass hot dogs or something, and you just sit there and put, you know, just load quarters in that thing.
Yep. Cam says AEW is allegedly going to announce plans to do a show in Jerry's World next year. Jerry's World, by the way, for those that don't know, being slang for AT&T Stadium in Dallas. What's your over/under prediction on them being able to sell even half of the stadium out? So, AT&T
Deal.
Stadium is a relatively new stadium. It holds, I want to say, like close to 80,000 people.
It was 80,000 seats
Yeah,
and like 100,000 standing.
and it's held WrestleManias, like WrestleManias have been held in this stadium, and AEW is going there. AEW, who draws 3,000 people to their weekly like flagship television taping, live event, is going to this place.
3,000 people at the UMBC Rec Center. Like what the fuck? Like, it's not. Yo, I don't root for the downfall of AEW, but like it's hilarious, yo, because like
a lot of hubris.
do you realize a lot of hubris, man? Like, one, you own a football team, right? You own a fucking football team.
Well,
why
I mean,
don't you just do it?
To be pedantic, his dad owns a football team.
Okay, well, yeah, his dad owns a football team. Like, you got access to a football stadium. I've seen you do matches in there, right? And second, like, the reason that Wembley was like a big deal is because that part of the world is starved for professional wrestling to acknowledge them.
Starved for major professional wrestling events.
Yes, major professional wrestling. Yeah, they have wrestling over there, but plenty of it. But like for the number 2 company to decide to go over there for the first time, like it was a big deal. And for him to turn around and immediately be like, we're doing it again next year, like at the end of that first year, like I don't know, yo, like this dude, is he married? He doesn't seem like a ladies' man. Yeah, he don't seem like a ladies' man, because it's like, hey, I had a really good date. Let's schedule another one right now. Like, yo, let's chill for a second, man. Like, you know, wait 3 days and all that bullshit, right? Like, give her a call, but like, just chill, man. Like, just chill. Like, make sure they like you first.
I think they'll sell half of AT&T Stadium, but I think you're going to see a lot of tarp in the upper deck of the stadium. Not a lot of overhead shots. I don't think of the crowd in there, which is good because those shots will be obfuscated by those massive fucking video boards that they have in that fucking place. So, let's see here. T-Wash says, "Who is your favorite joke character?"
Dan Hibiki.
I'm about to say it's got to be Dan Hibiki, right?
Dan. It's Dan.
Yeah.
Man. It's Dan. It is absolutely Dan. Dan was created because SNK had a Ryu clone named Ryo, an Asian guy with a tattered gi, that knew karate or martial arts, right? Like he was a Ryu clone, right? And so they were like, okay, well, you're gonna copy ours, we're gonna copy yours and make him a doofus, right?
Yep.
And Dan is very much like, Dan is incredibly lovable. He has a terrible backstory, right? Like he has this beef with Sagat because Sagat like killed his dad, and so he's got like a one-sided rivalry with Sagat. But he's like Steven Seagal too, yo. Like he thinks he knows like martial arts like with the best of them, and like he could hold his own in a fight, but like against somebody that don't know how to fight. You know what I mean? But Dan is awesome. Dan is awesome. I love Dan. I'm still hoping for some sort of Sean redemption, because Sean turned into a joke
I'm
character.
about to say Sean wasn't intended to be a joke character.
Right.
So,
Right, exactly.
just became that way.
And I'm still hoping for some sort of redemption arc. I didn't appreciate it when they bleached his skin in Street Fighter V. I want him to once again have some sort of melanin or tan. I know he's half Japanese and half Brazilian that likes basketball and not soccer for some strange reason, but nah, I'm hoping for some sort of redemption arc for Sean. But no, Dan is the answer.
Yeah.
I would agree. One just for me and Micah, one vote given to what was the fucking guy's name? Conrad.
Oh my god, dude.
I can't remember his last name now.
Yeah. I know it was Conrad, and he was the blonde guy who was an uber fan of Commander Shepard.
Yeah.
And depending on how your Shepard is, you could be really mean, or like you could just like, okay, this guy's a mild annoyance, but he's not hurting anybody, or you could just be a real dickhead to him, man.
On that front, I have to make mention of the adoring fan from
Conrad in Mass Effect is definitely like a take
the
on
adoring
that.
fan.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
So the adoring fan is Oblivion, yes.
Yeah.
I was about to be like Cyrodiil, like technically correct, but not the word we're looking for. Yeah. And then what I did like about the culture about the adoring fan is that in Starfield they brought that character back with the original voice actor, and you can just like have another blonde elfish weirdo hanging around all the time on your ship. So that's another fun one.
Yeah. Finally, we'll wrap it up this week with Johnny, who says, "Okay, Brad, tell me why the U.S. deserves to host the World Cup after the Copa America fiasco." So what Johnny's referring to, not only the U.S.'s really embarrassing performance in the Copa America, but also the just utter mismanagement of the facilities for the Copa final that took place on Sunday. It was last night, as we're recording this, where people were literally like, crushed, and a lot of damage was done in the stadium because they had a really terrible vetting process getting people in the door as far as who had tickets and who didn't, and like the facilities were completely unprepared, which is the fault of CONCACAF and CONMEBOL, which are the North and South American soccer federations respectively. I don't think you'll see that issue with FIFA. FIFA tends to be a little bit better prepared for these kind of events. But my argument to Johnny, because Johnny asked me this in a DM offline, and look, I would say that you look at the last two countries to host the World Cup. 2018 was Russia, and 2022 was Qatar. So again, complete mismanagement of the facilities. That's in alignment with the last two World Cup hosts. Having a national soccer team that's gone to shit, or barely existed in the first place in the case of Qatar, again, in alignment with the first two folks. And now we're seeing vast swaths of political corruption and political violence, which again puts us right in line with those other two countries. So if anything, I would say that we have never been better positioned to host a FIFA World Cup in our entire history.
Yeah, I don't know much about this, but I do remember John Oliver doing a story about it. So it wasn't.
Pretty sure John Oliver did stories for both the Russia and the Qatar World Cups, as well as other stories he's just done on FIFA generally. They're worth a watch. FIFA, quite famously, one of the most corrupt and bereft of humanity organizations on the planet. And you may say to yourself, well, I find that hard to believe. They're just the soccer people. Well, there's where there's a lot of money involved and a lot of power and influence to throw around, you will always find incredible corruption. And in fact, FIFA is so corrupt that they ousted their previous corrupt president and managed to find a guy that is just as corrupt, but is just a little bit more suave about doing his deals so that his corruption is just not naked, and just sitting on the surface. So, just incredible, an incredible organization, FIFA, and yet we all watch their tournaments with glee and manage to just shut that shit out of our mind for 3 weeks every 4 years.
And look, he owned it. He owned it. He was like, "I love soccer so much, guys."
You have to.
Like,
you have to. It is very easy to turn your brain off for 3 weeks and forget all the stuff. I mean, to give an example that might even be more widely known, look at the Rio Summer Olympics from 2016, I think it was, and how fucked up the Brazilian state infrastructure was, and how unprepared they were to host that event as well. And that's kind of, what you get from the Qatar and Russia World Cups, especially Qatar. Holy shit!
Yeah, didn't they like build a bunch of stadiums?
Oh, they had
with horrible working conditions, and then they're just not being used now.
Yeah, that's, I mean, to be fair, that's like every World Cup and Olympics that exists, unless you go to a place like America that just has like stadiums as far as the eye can see. But like most countries have to build something, and typically like to build something. Like they like to build that new stadium to be like the crown jewel of the coverage and stuff like that, to make it awesome. And then for the most part, it generally tends to go unused. But like Qatar, indentured servitude is basically legal there, so like they were using a lot of that labor to build those stadiums. Because again, when you think of a World Cup hosting country, you think of like the biggest and most powerful countries in the world. Qatar is literally the size of the state of Connecticut, and somehow they got a World Cup. And if you look a little bit deeper into Qatar and say, man, how is Qatar such a wealthy country when they're the size of Connecticut? You find out why. It makes it real easy to figure out how the wheels were greased, pun very much intended, to get Qatar a World Cup in 2022. So, but yeah, like I said, Johnny, I would say that based on recent the past couple years in America, we have never been better positioned to host a World Cup. Absolutely. And in Olympics too. Yeah, another bereft, corrupt organization, the IOC. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. But hey, Paris in a couple weeks, guys, get excited! It's gonna be fucking awesome. So that's it for the show this week. Thank you guys very much for your questions. Again, densepixels.com/fans to submit them in Discord. Make sure if you're listening to the audio version, you also go subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/densepixels. Of course, if you're listening to the YouTube version, go check out us on podcast feed, as well as all the other TNP studio shows. Black and Black Cinema just released a new episode last week talking about Project 2025, something that we normally talk about and look forward, but I think a very important look into what could potentially be coming down the pipe in American politics if you don't do your fucking job and get out there and vote. And of course, you can also sign up for premium content by going to densepixels.com/premium. It just costs you $5 a month to get access to our premium slate of shows. I can promise you that the full episode to look forward this week is going to be a humdinger, and certainly worth plunking down the $5 for. So hey, give it a shot, I'd say. In terms of like,
shut up, yo.
Yeah.
Oh, on that note, thank you guys very much for watching and listening, and we'll see you all the next time.
See ya.
See ya.
You're watching the Dense Pixels YouTube channel. Click the subscribe button while you're here, and make sure you check out our weekly podcast where we discuss the latest gaming news and our impressions on what games we've been playing.